Hi, hello. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Rin. Happy spring, everybody. I haven't been reading too much. I think I only read like 1 or 2 books in the month of March. I am hoping to pick that back up and get back into reading a little bit more. Hopefully I'll have some more free time to do so. Today I thought I would share some of the books that I really want to read this spring. Some that just feel maybe a little bit spring to me. It might be a little late on this one, but it's only about a month into spring and it's honestly only just started getting warm where I am, so it hasn't felt like spring really yet until now. I feel like spring recommendations always get very like naturey and like environmental writing, which I do have some, but I also have some different kind of themes that feel like they align with spring and I kind of am interested in exploring in the next couple of months. So that's the vibe. Also, side note, I'm currently wearing Ophiron by Diptyque perfume. I have like a little sample of it and it's very interesting. The juniper berry gives it like a very sweet, fruity scent without it being like overly done, so it's very sophisticated. But it dries down so powdery on my skin that I'm like not in love with it. Okay, so the first kind of few books that I talk about fall into this like category that I'm kind of interested in reading about right now, and it focuses on women, and specifically women that are experiencing like deep emotional turmoil. So you'll see when we talk about the first few books. But the first one to talk about is The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir. I'm actually currently reading this. This is a series of 3, they call it long stories. They're each about a woman going through an intense emotional reckoning, something very severe happening in their life that's causing them a lot of pain and suffering and seems to be forcing them to kind of reconcile internally how they're feeling and dealing with like relationships, how like that's impacting their relationships, how they're feeling about the like most important relationships in their lives. So I only read the first story so far, which is called The Age of Discretion. And that one more specifically is about a woman struggling with her son growing up and kind of choosing a different life path than her and her husband's, and her kind of coming to terms and reconciling with the idea that her son has different ideals than she does. And I really enjoyed it. I underlined quite a bit in it because I felt it was such a interesting depiction of like the very messy emotions that she felt. It was so interesting because it felt like so realistic. It really showcased her as like an imperfect person. I've read a lot of like messy girl fiction, or like unhinged women fiction, especially modern ones, like recently published ones. While I've liked a lot of those books, I feel like the situations that they go through in the story or the characters themselves are just very overdone or just very extreme in general. And so this depiction was interesting because it showed that kind of like selfish, emotionally erratic behavior in a woman while also still being very realistic and relatable just as like a human who is not perfect, and you experience all these different emotions and not sure how to process or deal with them. Excited to read the other ones. I don't know what the monologue is about, which is the second story, but the third one, which is called The Woman Destroyed, is about a woman whose husband cheats on her and she is dealing with like the emotional backlash of that. Another theme I really enjoyed in this book so far is the perspective on youth and aging and simultaneously feeling time pass, but also feeling like no time has passed at all. Almost like you're aging, but you don't even realize that you're aging. Sticking with that same theme, the other book that I want to read is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I've only read her essay, A Room of One's Own, by her, which I really enjoyed, but so I've never read any of her fiction before. So I'm very interested. This book follows a woman, Mrs. Dalloway, over one day in her life as she is planning a party for that evening. And I think as you walk with her throughout the day, you learn more about the other people that she runs into, and you get a really deep, introspective look into her life. From what I've heard about this book is that it's very emotional, very sad, that Mrs. Dalloway is processing a lot of her life and how she got to where she is at this day in the novel, and she reflects on just like her choices and things that happened. I think the day is like one of the early days in June, so I feel like this is a good one for spring. I've had this book on my TBR for quite some time, so I really feel like I need to get to this. Okay, and the last one in this category is Good Morning Midnight by Rhys. Rhys. Oh my gosh, this is dirty. This follows a woman who arrives in Paris after some tragedy. You don't know what it is, and you see her trying to escape that by flitting around and experiencing different things in Paris and trying to ignore her problems and be like carefree and happy. I also think that this is quite depressing as well from what I've heard. I read the first couple of pages and then I put it down for no real reason. The intro is very interesting. The writing style is very like haphazard, and it feels like you're really following along with her thoughts as they're like popping into her head. And then the next book that I want to read is Notes of a Crocodile by miaojin, translated by Bonnie Hu from the Chinese, I'm pretty sure. This book takes place in Taiwan in the 80s, and it follows a bunch of students discovering themselves and discovering like their queerness, love, and friendship while studying at this school. I think this one would be interesting for spring because I feel like it sounds like a coming of age for a lot of different students, and it's a lot about like regrowth and discovering yourself and learning more in general, learning about the world and just being open. Yeah, it says illustrating a process of liberation from the structures of gender through radical self-inquiry. I feel like that fits with spring and like the freedom and the everything that comes with that. So that's this one. The last one that I'm putting on my spring TBR is Northwoods by Daniel Mason. I can't find my physical copy of it right now. This one is the one that I think that's the most like environmental. It follows a house in New England, follows its different inhabitants throughout the centuries. Kind of like an epic saga. I'm not too sure about the different characters that it follows, but I think there's a lot of description of like the woods and the trees around the house and just generally nature. I've heard that the writing is really beautiful. I think it also has some sort of like magical realism elements to it. It's kind of not a straightforward historical fiction, a little bit genre bending style, so that's very interesting. I've been reading a lot of these like large scale, multi-generational saga books. I read Pachinko recently, and I read The Overstory by Richard Powers. Kind of on a theme with these books. I liked them, and there were parts that I didn't like, so I guess we'll see. This one's shorter than those other two, so it might be more digestible. I think those are all the books on my spring TBR. I'm curious about what books you guys are looking to read in the next couple of months. I'm hoping to be reinvigorated with spring. I think that's everything. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!